Officer Ray Isaac. I'm the full-time recruiter for the police department as well as part-time community relations officer. I've been a police officer here in Colorado Springs for 23 years, just about. Finishing up my 23rd year. So the part of the presentation that I'm going to kind of go over is the recruiting process, the hiring process, leading up to backgrounds. And then like Mr. Rodoval said, Lieutenant Lux will talk about some of the oral board stuff, which I have nothing to do with, and Tina's going to talk about the backgrounds, which I also have nothing to do with. A lot of people call me and want to, when you call a police agency, most police agencies, when you contact them, you're interested in hiring, are not going to be looking at your resume, for example, right off the bat. We do make it available to where you can submit it online, but if you call the recruiter, you call me and say, hey, I'd like you to look at my resume, I'd say it's really nice, but I can't do anything with it. So I'm going to answer a lot of the questions that you may have about the initial process, how to get it started, and we're also going to talk a little bit about what exactly your job is. If you get hired, you go through the academy and become a police officer. So we're going to look at police recruit officer duties, we're going to look at the minimum qualifications, how to apply and test, and then we'll go into the background investigations and about the training academy, what to expect from that. So the primary duties of a police officer are those. You prevent crime, you protect lives and property, you enforce the laws of the state of Colorado, statutes, you respond to emergency situations. You pretty much do just about everything that needs to be done because you are that first responder that's going to show up on the scene. It is a dangerous job. I'm not going to sugarcoat it. I mean, I looked at the officer down memorial page, and to this date, we're at 114 officers. So the reason I say that and do that, a lot of people sometimes take the test, they have a certain romantic notion of what police work is until they actually get to the academy or they actually get on field training and realize this is not what I signed up for. 23 years that I've been doing this, I've loved it. I've got no complaints. I think it's the best job in the world. But there are realities to the job, so you have to put those realities in the back of your mind. Yes, you're going out there to help people. You're going to have some good days, some bad days, but you also have dangers that you're going to have to face because that's your job. Okay?
It's a beautiful Tuesday afternoon in Southeastern.
Once you go through the application and hiring process and you get hired on, you're going to be working in patrol for at least your first 5 years. A lot of people have the interest of becoming detectives, going to specialized units, doing anything else after that, and that's one of the things I like about police work because there's such a variety of options for career advancement. But your first 4 to 5 years, expected to be in patrol, doing patrol work. What are the minimum qualifications? So anybody here under 21? Which means you have to wait a few years. Under 21, we have a CSO program. Anybody heard of that?
I'll be 21 by hiring date. I was
Cool.
sure to that.
For anybody that you know of who's in school and not 21 yet, we have a community service officer program. You can get on at 18. You get exposed to a lot of police work, especially report writing. CSOs just don't have arrest powers, but they assist us in traffic accidents. They assist us in every other aspect of police work, especially with taking a lot of reports that we need our officers to take priority 1 calls and not necessarily taking a report of somebody who stole your garden hose. Okay? You can't have committed a felony in the last 3 years or ever been convicted of a felony. The reason they say have committed a felony, you may have committed a felony and didn't get caught. They will go further on, Tina will go further on this on your background, but you have to disclose everything. So if you committed a burglary, just because you didn't caught didn't mean you didn't commit the felony. Okay? You can't have been convicted of a misdemeanor crime of domestic violence. If you go under the Post of Colorado website, it has an entire list of misdemeanors that if you have been convicted of any of those, you cannot be certified in the state of Colorado for post. You can't work as a police officer in the state of Colorado if you're not certified. It's like being a doctor, you're not licensed, you can't practice. Let's talk about education. Everybody here is in school, so nobody here is going to have that issue. In order to apply for CSPD, you have to have at a minimum an associate's degree, 60 college credit hours. We do have an alternate education program, whereas we can take somebody who has 30, who's working on the associates, and we have a program that we can put them in to where if they get hired, they go through our academy, they pick up another 30 credit because we are a post academy, so we teach you all the post requirements, and you take the post test to be certified in the state of Colorado. Can't be released from the military on dishonorable conditions, good physical condition. And that website is wrong, but. So one of the things that's not on here I want to touch on is marijuana. Every recruiting event that I go to, every time I talk to people, I talk about marijuana. Marijuana is legal in the state of Colorado. You can consume marijuana. However, if you want to become a police officer, that's not going to work for you. And we are actually one of the most lenient agencies in the state to where we allow 18 months. Some agencies, it's upward to 3 to 5 years. So if you consume marijuana within 18 months of applying, you may or may not get hired, okay? If you consume marijuana during the application process, obviously that's gonna disqualify you. I think some of my slides got turned around a little bit, but we're gonna talk first about, so the way the process works, when we start hiring, we put out information for people to submit their application. That is your first important step. If your application is not complete, is missing information, it's most likely not gonna get processed through and gonna get sent back to you. So you need to be thorough, you need to provide all the information required on that application and read it carefully because people miss things because they don't pay attention, they don't read it. Once your application comes in, it gets reviewed by somebody from our HR, and then you receive an email notifying you of your test date. It's important when you fill out your application that you have a good email address on there. I've had people call me 2 months later. I had a guy call me this morning and said, I filled out an application, I never heard anything back. Well, we sent you an email, but now you have to apply all over again because we're already done the written test. And he didn't watch for his email notifying him of the written test. So it's important that you watch your emails once you apply and that you have a good email address. So the first step again, once you get that email, you come and you take a written test. Written test consists of about a couple hundred questions somewhere in there, I believe. You just took it, right?
I think we all
You got it.
have already taken.
Okay, cool. So you guys already know the written test. You've got the part that deals primarily with integrity, and you got the part that's kind of general knowledge stuff. Who has taken the test? Just about everybody. Awesome. Everybody take the abilities, the physical abilities test yet? 2. Okay. Saturday.
Yes, sir.
I saw you. Sit-ups, push-ups, the Illinois agility run, and the beat test. To max, need that right there. The fitness test is pass or fail. So it doesn't matter if you max it or if you just score right at the level, it's pass or fail. It doesn't go into the calculation of the points for the banding process. And there's the information on the written test. And I'm gonna pause it there because I'm not part of the oral board process. So I'm gonna have, you wanna jump in on that, sir? Talk
Yeah.
about the oral board?
Let me introduce myself. My name is Mike Lutz. I actually I was part of this last year when we did really just did the oral boards and kind of brought some people in and said, hey, it's kind of like an interview. Come on in and take a chance on this and see how you do. After we did that, we found out it didn't really work very well because the oral boards is way different than any interview you normally take. So any I don't know, any company you want to go to, usually what you do is you go in and you just kind of have a conversation with people. You know, you come in for a job, and especially entry level. But the police and fire have a setup that's just, you really have to understand what you're getting into. It's kind of shocking to people that it's not a conversation at all, and we'll talk about it. It's really a question and answer, and it's a scoring method that we use. Once you learn how they're scoring you, you can design your answers to make sure that you get the highest score and that you'll do really well. And that's what we're going to look at today. A couple things I wanted to do is, when we put this together, I wanted to give you kind of a highlight, an overview. This is the police department in general. This is what you're going into. Please do not come in and after 6 months in the academy say, it's really not for me. We have very limited spots. Think about 2,000 people applying, and we're picking out what we consider the best 50. And that's high for us to get 50 people in there, best 50. And then we send you into the academy for 6 months. Then you're gonna go into what's considered the field training program for 3 months. You'll have a trainer, an experienced person out there. Rich Radabal was one of them when I started out. It wasn't mine, but he was out there. And he was very difficult. He's really smart. But consider that you'll have a senior officer with you for 3 months, and it's like, kid you not, it's like taking a driver's test. I get more people that are just wound so tight and extremely stressed during that 3 months compared to the training academy. That's just part of it. We're winding you up and we're testing you, and you're having somebody sit next to you, and it's not your best friend. It's somebody scoring you. They'll work with you and they'll be your partner, but they're scoring you every day. And it's extremely stressful on yourself and your families. But once you get through it, you'll have all the knowledge you need, and you'll be able to handle just about any call, or you'll know where to get the resources to do it. So that's what I want to do, is say, hey, this is the police department in general, and I think he gave you a good idea of, hey, this is what you're going to do, if in fact you want to do it. And a lot of people pull out. They say, I'm going to test, and they test at the beginning or pull out. That's okay. Just once you're committed, though, and you say, yep, I want to do it, that's what I want to make sure you're going to do it. So let me jump back. So what I'd like to do is, what we found, and I worked with Tina for quite a bit in backgrounds, a couple of years, 3 years maybe, and we're going to tell you a couple of things that we found where people had difficulty and maybe give you an advantage. Because I think anytime you're testing for something, if you can seek out people that have either been there, have taken that test, or have knowledge of that test, you can research it, whatever you want, you're setting yourself up for success. Versus I'm just going to go in and throw my name down and see what happens. So this is really good. So we're going to talk about backgrounds first, where the pitfalls are, what we look for, the difficulty people have, how we eliminate people right off the bat. And then we'll talk about oral boards, because I think the oral boards is really, the backgrounds in the oral boards is really what you need to focus in on now. The written test, you already got that, and we really can't help you with that, but you've been in school, you know how to take a test, pretty much just circle the bubbles, you're good to go, pick the right answer. Then other than that, we'll help you out. The physical, I want to just touch on. Physical ability is absolutely right. There's no difference between the minimum score and the maximum score. Really, I mean, you pass, right? Pass, fail? Just please keep in mind that a majority of the people that are helping with the testing are the people that are assigned to the training academy. And you probably want to make sure that you're doing a good job. I would probably try to do my best. You know, don't shoot for the high being the minimum for you. You know, you want to impress the people that are actually scoring it. Then when you get in the academy, the same attitude all the way through. 6 months of not 100%, but 110. You really want to do that because your name starts, and we'll talk about that right when you apply. And then all the way through the academy, I'll hear about it because we get briefed on it right when you come out. And I work in patrol. And I get briefed on the people in the academy and everything about them. Well, the academy gets briefed on everything about you from the people who did your backgrounds. From day one when you applied, all the way through and all their contacts with you. So everybody knows about you. So those are things you want to consider. All right, so let's start with I want to kind of reverse it and start with the backgrounds first, I think, because that's the thing that's coming up, and the oral boards, and we'll hit them both. So I'll have Tina start talking, and I'm going to probably jump in because that's what I do, and I'll interject and throw some things in there and let her run it. Fair enough? Thank you.
The next thing you have to raise, that can work for you.
You're good.
All right.
My slides are good.
I'm glad y'all came out today too, because this might make my job a little easier when I see your background one of these days. Because I'm going to go over some of the things that drive us crazy, and it won't be any of you guys. But I'm not going to get a list of names just in case, so it won't be unless I see your face. I'll know you didn't pay attention. I put things down on a list because I'm a list person. Didn't want to forget anything, so I even picked the brains of a couple other backgrounders. What else do we need on here? My list got 2 pages long, so I'll go through all this with you. Just a little history. I was a police officer here for 13 years until I did an early vested retirement and then came back to do backgrounds with them. I've been doing that now since 2007. So long time doing the background, seen the process change quite a bit. But it seems like the applicants haven't, and the things that we commonly see, errors and things like that, stay the same pretty much. So I'll go through this with you. I know Ray went over a couple things with you about how to get to this point. You don't see the backgrounds unless you've been successful at everything up to this point. Your backgrounds come when you get that final conditional offer of successfully completing the background process. You'll have a psychological evaluation. That is with our staff psychologist. So you have a face-to-face with them. First, you fill out 2 big, long,
MMPI? And
yeah,
16?
MMPI, 16PI. And those are tests that you can't study for, and a little tip for you there. Don't try. Don't get online and Google how to pass a polygraph test or a psych, because that will screw you up. We talk to our psychologists sometimes and say, hey, you know, I thought this guy was good. I did his background. What happened? And a lot of times he'll say, well, based on what I'm looking at, I'm thinking they probably Googled it and got on to figure out how to take a test. And there's some really bad information out there. Psychological tests are not something you study for. You just answer the questions. And if you haven't already taken one, they're weird. You feel like you're like, I don't want to pick any of these, but I have to pick one. So again, just don't try and prepare for those. Just get in there and answer the questions. And same with the polygraph. Don't try and find out how to pass one. Just be honest, that's how you pass one. No studying necessary, so a couple tips on that for you. Once you do get into the background process, that's going on at the same time as your polygraph and your psychs. For the backgrounders, we don't like to do our one-on-one interview. We do have a one-on-one interview with you during the backgrounds, but we don't do that until after you've taken your polygraph test. So we're scheduling those things with you as we go. Some things to be prepared for that. This is not a normal, Ray talked about the application. It's not the application. You're going to be required to fill out what we refer to as a personal history questionnaire. This is generally about a minimum of 85 to 95 pages long that you fill in the blanks on. It's long. A lot of, you've done it.
Seattle
Someone done it?
Police Department, when I applied, they had us fill one out before we took our physical,
Yeah.
and I was like, oh my god, this
It's
stuff is
long.
so...
Yes, it's very detailed, a lot of information. It's not what you already did. It's not your little application that took you 30 minutes, an hour, a couple hours maybe to do initially. So these are some things you can really prepare yourself for. With any agency you're testing for, you're going to run into this. We all collect this information from applicants. Some departments refer to it as something else. We use a web-based system called ESOF right now. And so you'll be invited via email to fill out your PHQ, your personal history questionnaire. When you get that email, do it right away. You will have 5 days before you're locked out. And it will tell you all this. 5 days before you're locked out of that system. Sounds like a long time to fill out an application, but it's not. What you need to have ready ahead of time, and you can start doing this today when you leave here if you haven't already done it, and it's more than a resume. So the things you're going to need to prepare for. We ask for 10 years worth of employment history. Might not sound too hard because most of you are pretty young in here, but that employment history, what we want from you is every employer you've had within the last 10 years, whether it was an under-the-table paid job, it was a part-time job, you only did it for 2 days and you quit, you did it for 2 months and never went back, it was a seasonal, you did it every summer in between classes or whatever. Every one of those jobs we want. And we need the name of the company, business, whatever it is. We want the address, even if it's no longer in business. What was the address when you worked there? A contact name, phone number, and email address for your supervisor. And yeah.
I have a question specifically pertaining to that. I've had 2 jobs in the past, and both of my supervisors quit, and I am not even sure I can get that information
And I'm
anymore.
going to answer that because that's pretty common. So again, you're going to get we want your supervisor's name still. Whoever it was that you worked for at that time, we want that person's name. And if you know that they've already quit, what you're going to do is you're going to call that business and you're going to say, hey, you know, I used to work there in 2009 I've been gone since 2010, but I'm applying for a job, and they need a contact name, phone number, and email for someone there that can verify that I worked there. That's your job to do. I already have a job. I'm not looking for a job. I'm not going to do your job. So we expect you guys to do all that front work. Then you have to go even further. We want 2 coworkers from every job you've had in the last 10 years. Name, phone number, email address for them. That sounds kind of tough. And sometimes you're like, you know, I don't even remember. I remember his name was Bob. That's all I remember about it. Do what you can to try and find that information out. Makes my job a lot easier, because if you don't, I'm going to have to try and find it out. If there were no coworkers, that's fine. You're going to tell us there were no coworkers. But when I call, if I find out there were and you just didn't want me to talk to them, that's the kind of thing that eliminates you from our process. So, yeah.
If you, instead of coworkers, like, do coworkers have to be on the same level as you, as the same title, or can you like put managers or?
Yeah, you can. You can't be a supervisor if they were your direct supervisor.
Okay.
But sometimes they're, depending on the business, you might have someone that worked with you. They might have even worked at a whole different company, but you had to do jobs together. That's fine. Someone that we can talk to that worked with you, whether it was the same employer or not, worked with you together, if that makes sense. So it's going to take a lot of research on your part to try and get this information. And what we want to know is what you do to try and find that out, because sometimes you can't. But we want to know that you tried. And if you go, oh, you know what, I couldn't find it, we talked to you and you say, oh, my supervisor doesn't work, they don't know anything, and they wouldn't tell me anything, and then I call them and they go, oh, yeah, well, that's so-and-so. They just transferred to another store. They're so that we're like, you're right, you didn't do your job. Give me an excuse, because we check all that. So keep that in mind. You're going to be able to tell us what you did to try and find out the information that you're not able to provide, because you won't be able to provide it all. But you're going to try. So that really helps us. If it's a big company, we also want a contact name, phone number, and email address for someone in HR. So you work for Abercrombie and Finch at the mall. You're going to give us supervisor's name, contact information, the coworkers, and someone with HR. And again, if you're not sure of that information, the best way to ask for it is just to say, hey, who can I have a potential employer contact to verify that I used to work there? If they tell you we use E-Verify or we use the work number or something like that, some 800 number, see if you can find somebody at that particular store that we can contact in person still, because we will not pay the fees to get that information from them. And if your backgrounder needs the information, and that varies by different things that we find in your background, you may end up having to pay those fees. So it's always best to try and find someone, a person that we can actually talk to. And you as the employee or former employee have a better chance of getting that information. So that's the employment stuff we're going to ask you for. Then we want 10 years worth of your residence history. Again, you guys are young. That's probably not a whole lot of places. We get people that apply with us in their 50s. They've been in the military. They've been all over the place. We ask them for the same stuff. And some agencies you apply with, no matter how old you are, will make you go back to age 16. So when you're a 45-year-old applying somewhere, whew, that's a lot of stuff you got to provide. If you're lucky with us, 10 years. But what we do want, if it was a rental, we want the landlord's name, contact name, email, and phone number.
I have a question about that.
Okay.
So my folks are renting. Do you still want the landlord stuff even if it's under my folks and not
We
under
give you the
mine?
opportunity on our questionnaire. It says lived with parents.
Okay.
So you can mark that and not have to put their name over and over and over again.
Okay.
So yeah. We also want roommates. And again, if it was family, it gives you the opportunity to say, you know, I lived at home and I've had siblings or whatever. You don't have to list them over and over because you moved away and then came back and moved away. Yeah.
If you lived on campus, do you want like the campus housing director?
Oh yeah.
Okay.
Yep. Whoever, you're responsible to somebody when you're renting. No matter who's paying the bill. Somebody is going to be the one saying, we're booting you out if you're screwing up. And that's kind of the stuff we're looking at. That's what we want to know. Did you have trouble with them? Did people complain about them all the time? We're going to ask your landlords that. Whether it was an apartment complex, it was a basement apartment you rented, whatever it was, we're going to ask them about that. We talk to your parents and siblings anyway, so we don't make you list them over and over. But that's residence history. So any roommates, even if they're like, oh my gosh, so keep track of that stuff right now. I can't tell you how many college students that are like, I had no idea. I lived in a house and there were like 5 of them and they've moved in and out and I don't remember. Try and start keeping track of that stuff right now. Put it somewhere digitally and keep it so you might need it someday. Yeah.
You said you're gonna talk to family and siblings, kinda sorta step or used to be
I'll get to
step?
that. I'll get to
Okay.
that. I haven't gone over family yet, but I'll get specific on that. Yeah.
Okay.
If you live out of state and like your parents moved, but like you're still here, if you go home for Christmas, like do you list where your parents moved to?
Anywhere that you've lived, whether it was a temporary residence, the only thing we don't require is like you went on vacation for 2 weeks and you stayed at some resort. We don't need that. That's considered a vacation. But if you moved with your parents for 2 months and then you got your own place, that 2 months better be accounted for. So start thinking about that, especially military family. I always feel bad for our military. They're moving a lot. You have to keep track of a lot of things. We expect you to do as much as you can to try and get that information for us. So, and it will specify that. One of the things you'll see, and I should have put this at the top of the list, when you're filling out this PHQ, there are instructions for every single section. They are very, very, very clear. You read through them, and you have to mark before you go on, yes, I read and understood the instructions for this section. When you mark yes, and then you don't give us half of what we're looking for, when we're doing your interview with you, we're going to say, did you mark that, right? That was you? Why didn't you fill this in? Oh, I didn't know I had to provide that. Did you read the instructions? And consider, this is another thing I probably should have bumped up to the top. This whole process, from the very first day that you get on and just apply with the city, is a test. Everything you do through the academy and through that training that Lieutenant Lux talked about is part of your process. You're being scored on it, you're being watched. You're building a reputation once you're hired. That's your reputation. Before you get on, you have a reputation. If the backgrounders tell the academy, this guy didn't give us half the stuff we needed, it was like pulling teeth to get the information, you know, they know that you're probably going to be trouble for them in the academy. They're going to tell you to do stuff and you're going to be like, yeah, whatever, I don't listen to it. That stuff follows you through if you even get hired because of some of those things. That can keep you out. So every contact you have throughout this entire process, even if you go to the front desk to check in for your interview or your polygraph, that person at the front desk, they tell us if you were a jerk to them. They tell us, and that goes in the background. It's all part of a test. This is about you as a person. It's not like getting a job as a manager at McDonald's. You are going to represent us in front of the public, and we don't want to see you on the front page of the Gazette because you were a jerk to somebody. The lieutenant doesn't want to see you in his office because you're in trouble because you were a jerk. So this is a personality thing too. This is about how you treat other people. So keep that all in mind.
I think it's important to know the why. At least we should be able to explain that to you. So when you travel and you, even though you left for a year and you stayed somewhere, the reason that we're looking for it is because we're going to run it. We're going to run your name. We're going to run a local, we're going to run a county, and then we're going to run that state as well. And we're going to find out information that happened there. So you moved here, and you stayed there maybe even a year, but we find out some criminal stuff that went on there. Doesn't mean it knocks you out completely, unless you're the mass murderer, then we'll get one arrest. But other than that, we want to know, really, all this things that she's asking you for is, are you going to tell us everything we asked for, and are you going to tell us the truth? So I think the why is really important, because if you sit down and you go, oh my gosh, I've got TV shows to watch, I got homework to do, and this is going to take a long time. So really, is it that important? I'm telling you the why now, because this is what we're going to do on the back end. They're really good about finding the holes right off the bat and saying there's a 2-year gap here, and then we're going to focus in on it. Just like any investigation, there's no different between this and any investigation we do. Same thing. And the background is going to go with it. Here's a hole. Or if there's no hole, good to go. Here's a hole, and then we're going to focus in why is there a hole. And then why do we want to know about everybody you ever contacted? She mentioned roommates, she mentioned family members, employees, peers. Well, I can tell you that we had one lady that worked up in the trading post, you know, the trinkets and stuff like that. And we called a peer to follow up and say, hey, how is she? She a good employee, good person to work with? Said every Friday she breaks things here. She just throws fits and breaks them. It's all glass. And they just trash things. I said, unbelievable. How come you didn't fire her? And there was reasons for it, family members and stuff, but those are the things that we're looking for. If you lose your mind, is it, are you able to talk to people, or do you have a good personality that'll get along as a team player and stuff like that? That's what we're looking for. So here's the why, that when we're asking you all these questions that go back to her, say, we need this, here's the why. Because we want to find about you, we want to find out about your character, and we want to find out if you're a team player that's going to hang in there with us the whole way through when we pick you out of the 2,000 people. That's the why. So how do we get to the why? You got 80 pages of stuff to fill out, but that's the important part of it, because they're going to look at it just like a homicide investigation. Seriously, they spend hours and hours and hours sifting through to say, did you tell us the truth? Did you tell us the truth? Did you tell us the truth?
Weeks. It's
Weeks.
been weeks, not hours.
There
Yeah.
you go.
12 weeks on sworn investigations. So.
I have one other question for you pertaining to the work stuff. If we had two different levels of supervisor and one was more immediate of watching over our work and one was just more of the managerial.
We ask in the instructions and it'll say immediate supervisor. So again, that's a good point of why, when you fill it out, read those instructions carefully.
Okay.
Because they're going to specify that kind of information for you. So make sure that you're reading over that. We try not to leave any questions in there. Like I said, it's clear instructions. And that's, we're looking at that. Can they follow instructions? Did they read them and can they follow them? So, yeah. Oh, sorry.
I was just gonna ask, do you want, for all of these individuals, do you want the personal addresses or just corporate addresses and things like that?
It's going to be with the business person or the work address is fine. When we get into personal references and family members, we're going to ask you for their home address. I know I haven't covered that yet. So I told you about the 10 years of employment history, 10 years of residence history, personal references. And those are not professional references. And most people, if you've never applied for law enforcement, you're used to providing a professional reference. You might list your professor over there. And we're going to ask Rich Radaba, hey, how often does he go drinking with you? What movies does he like? And he's going to go, huh? I have him in class. That's not a personal reference. For us, a personal reference, and again, this is in the instructions, so you don't have to memorize this, just read the instructions. Someone that knows you personally. We're going to ask them about your drinking habits, your drug habits. Who are you dating? What do you like on the weekends? Where do you go? What are your hobbies? Those are the people we want to talk to, and we want a wide variety of people. We don't want every frat brother that's known you 2 years. We want a variety of people that have known you. Maybe it was a kid you grew up next to and you still keep in touch. We get a lot of, a family friend, and I'm calling Mrs. Gerber, who you grew up next to, and she's 85, and that's not the kind of person that probably goes out drinking with you on the weekends either. So that's not the one we want either. So we ask every reference that we talk to for 2 more people that they think might know you. And how do we get a hold of them? So we're going to talk to a ton of people you don't even know we're going to talk to. We ask you to list 5 personal references, but I always tell people be prepared to have at least 6 because someone might flake out on you or not be available. And we want to know that you've already contacted these people. They're okay with having the cops call them to check on you and ask them a lot of questions about you. So we're going to say, did you know that Ray put you down as a personal reference? And we better hear yes. Yeah, he told me, he asked me, and it's okay. The other thing when you ask him that is you want to make sure you have all of their correct information. You want to know you've got their correct email address. And if you don't contact them via email, you need to ask them for their email address. And make sure it's okay that we contact them that way. If they say no, we need to have a note in there that says they prefer not to get an email or they don't have an email address. We have to know that. But we want to know that you actually found that out, not because you're just too lazy to ask and you put, oh, no email address. Then when I call them and they go, oh, yeah, would you just email that to me? And I go, huh, okay, I will. But we're going to ask you for their current phone number, work phone number, cell phone number, home phone number. There's all these blanks to fill in. Some of them you can't fill in. A lot of people don't have a home phone now. It's all cell. But you'll be able to do that. But so be prepared with at least 6 personal references. They make you put 5 in there, but we have to contact 5. So if one of them doesn't get back to us, we're going to call you as a backgrounder and say, hey, this guy more likely will email you because we're doing a bunch of backgrounds at the same time. We're going to say, hey, haven't heard from these people yet. Will you touch base with them? And we're going to put it back on you to do that. Get with them and go, hey, dude, are you too busy? Or Because if you are, that's okay, I just need to know. And sometimes we tell you to have them look in their junk mail. Sometimes they don't think to look in junk mail and it might go into spam or something like that. So your
And on
first.
references, real quick a second.
Yeah.
Make sure that you talk to your, this is a tip, make sure that you talk to them. And not only that they know you're applying, that's important, what are they gonna say about you? There's nothing wrong with sitting down and saying, hey, I'm applying, what would you say? What do you think about that? And if they say, I really don't think that you have the ability to do that kind of job, I'd probably talk it out with them, and then I probably wouldn't use them, to be honest with you. But think about that. We've had a number of references tell us things that were absolutely shocking. They go, oh my gosh, who would put this person down as a reference? Great info for us, not so good for you. I didn't mean it knocked them out completely because it's one person. But and normally if we knock somebody out, meaning that they're not qualified, we'll have an abundance of this information coming in. But I'd be real careful about who I put down. This is not like you're going over to the mall and applying where they probably won't even call. We're calling everyone and we're digging and we're asking them for additional. Hey, by the way, I don't think it's an issue either. If they ask for anybody else, who would you say? What other people would you say if they were asking for anybody else in our group? Well, John and Sandy, of course. Okay, thanks. I'd probably pick up the phone and talk to John and say, hey, did you know I was applying? I don't think that's a problem. I think that's good work. I'm not saying tell them what to say. I'm saying you should know what they're going to say. Fair enough? That's one thing I would do because, and I know Dina's smiling, but it's sometimes it's shocking.
Secrets up. Dang it, I'm not going to get any fun references to talk to. Those are good points though. Family members. We're going to ask for email, phone, and a personal address for mom, dad, brothers, sisters, stepsisters, adopted siblings, in-laws, same with all those, step-in-laws, mothers-in-laws, father-in-laws. If you have exes, we're going to ask for exes, ex-husbands, their family, so be prepared with all that. And there are situations where you don't even know that information. What we tell you to do is try and get the information short of stalking somebody. Maybe there's one family member that still connects with that family member. Can you ask the sister to get the brother that you haven't talked to in 20 years? Can you get his name and number? Or his number and email address? We're going to see what have you done to try and get that, because we're going to have to do it. So you'll have a chance to explain to us if there's reasons you are no longer communicating with different family members. And we look at that information. We'll discuss it with you, and there are times when we even have to get it approved through a supervisor if there's someone we're not going to talk to for some reason. We'll run it up a chain of command and say, hey, is it okay if we don't contact this person? She has a restraining order against her brother because he did this, that, or the other. So you have a chance to explain those things to us. But we do expect you to at least have gotten the information or attempted to get the information for all those people. Yes, ma'am.
Do you understand when siblings do not get along and understand when a sibling may
Are
have...
you kidding? They don't?
I'm
Yes.
asking
That's
because...
why we ask lots of people lots of questions about you. It's like the lieutenant said, we don't take what one person said. Believe me, we hear that about exes all the time. You're going to contact my ex-wife. She hates me. She hates my guts. You know, we're going to talk to all those people. We don't go, oh, she hates you. If we find things that could be disqualifying, we're going to try and corroborate that with other people. We are completely used to all your family members don't love you and think you're the world's best person. So, but we are going to contact them.
Yeah, that's understandable. I was just
Yeah.
wondering...
Oh, yeah. Yeah, we know. We have siblings. I have them. Yeah.
What about ex-step family?
Like
Like it was step family, but now it's another divorce. So
if it's, and again, they're in the instructions. If they
Okay.
there's like a drop down menu, and it's going to say if you have any of these, we want you to try and get that information. If
Okay.
it falls within one of those, we're going to expect you to put them in there. If it doesn't, I would still, once you get a background investigator, say, you know, I didn't list this person because it didn't say it, but if you need that, let me know. We would much rather you say, hey, I have more than it maybe asked for, but I wasn't sure if you needed it. We appreciate that more than we found it and said, hey, why didn't you put that? Oh, I didn't know. So, yeah.
Will this go like to grandparents, aunts?
No grandparents, those aren't on there. Aunts and uncles are not on there. Again, it's just the ones listed on there, which are primarily what I just said.
Right.
But the whole step and adopted and all that is more defined in the instructions. So follow the instructions on there, and you'll be covered. Driving history. We get a lot of people that say, I got my, I pulled my driving record for you. Here it is. That's my driving history. And it says in the instructions, again, all this in the instructions, you don't even have to ask me questions. I guarantee they're in the instructions. Everything you can ever remember about your driving history. Not just what's on your driving record. You don't even have to pull your driving record. Some people pay and go get that for us. We get that. We already get that. We get it free. So don't spend your money on that. We want to know what you remember and the best you can remember about it. You know, I was 16 when I got my first ticket. I don't even remember because we're going to ask you for location, city, state, county it was in, what was the original charge, not what did you plea it down to. And we want to know what you remember. And we understand people forget those things. And that, as the background progresses, is obvious to us. But what we find a lot of times is people will list 3 citations. And we start looking, and we find 12, 15. And you know, when you list 3 and we find 4, as long as that 4th one wasn't like, you know, a DUI or something big and crazy, we get it. People can forget those things. But when you just go, oh, they won't even know about the ones I got in West Virginia when we lived there, or whatever it happens to be, well, we will find out about them. So just list everything you can remember, best you can remember, most information about it that you can remember, and that's what we want from you. It's the best that you can remember. So start thinking about that stuff now. Again, you can start jotting this stuff down, keep it in a little file. You'll be, you know, half your way through this stuff by the time you actually have to get online and fill it out. Let's see. Oh, and even if the police weren't involved. So you hit a tree and the car was still drivable, and I'm not gonna call the cops. I slid off the road on the ice and hit the tree, backed up, and went, is that a traffic accident? Yeah. And we ask you to list every traffic accident you were in, police involvement or not.
Does that include in your own driveway? I ask because I hit our basketball pool in our driveway.
Would that be an accident? Did you do any damage to the car? Did you do any damage to the basketball
Okay,
thing?
so that does count then. Okay.
And we'd rather have you list it and go, oh, you didn't even need to tell us about that. We'd rather have you list something that you didn't need to list than have us find out about it. Because we call your brother and he said, oh, did she tell you about when she knocked my basketball hoop over and tore the bumper off her car? So, essay questions. You will have to fill out by hand with no assist from a phone or computer. Did I scare anybody yet? Essay questions that we get as backgrounders. Your handwriting counts. The neatness counts. When I read the ones that go up and down like this, and scratch outs and things like that, you have to write these essay questions in your own handwriting. And there's 2 of them, and those get submitted to the backgrounders. We look at them. We're looking at grammar. We're looking at punctuation. We are looking at spelling and the content. And then they also go to the selection committee. Our selection committee is made up of our 2 deputy chiefs and our chief of police and a bunch of other people that sit in on it and just don't get to vote on you. They all look at those up on this big screen just like this in your handwriting, because cops write a lot. We have computers now. You have to write less than you used to. But if you're somebody that does the whole text writing stuff, you can't take that to court. And we have to look at that stuff. So if you know that that's an area of concern for you, start working on it now. And you can tell us, hey, you know, I've had trouble with this, but I'm working on it. I took an extra class on it, or I'm doing penmanship papers on my own, or I'm working on my block writing, because it doesn't have to be in script or anything. So keep that in mind, that you will have to do that. Sometimes that's shocking for people when they have you sit down and do those. It catches you off guard. Let's see. The most common issues we see regarding background, and this is incomplete or inaccurate PHQs. A lot of people will leave off a job they got fired from because they don't want to tell us about that. The lieutenant was talking about we look for gaps. We look for gaps in employment too. And if we find that you were like filling in the blanks, and we find out, because I told you, we're going to ask every single person we talk to, including coworkers and supervisors and family members and every reference you gave us, for 2 more people. We talk to a lot of people. One of the things we ask them, what jobs do you remember them ever having? Ever. I might be talking to your grandma, and grandma's going to tell me everything she remembers, or your neighbor, or whoever it is. So don't leave out any jobs just because you got fired from it, or didn't like it, or didn't think it was important. Don't leave out anything, because we're asking everybody anything they remember about you. And they might be wrong, and we realize that. So we also, if it's something you didn't provide us, we're gonna look into that a little further. We're not just gonna say, hey, you didn't tell us about Wendy's, and then you go, that wasn't me, that was my sister. I never worked at Wendy's. So, yeah.
What about volunteering?
If there's a whole section for volunteer work too, and that's really great. A lot of people, I'm glad you brought that up.
So
they
like
put
you
it
don't
on here.
generally pays on it.
Right, but we do, and that's something for your benefit too. We ask you for that information. If you're able to provide us someone that can verify that volunteer work for you, then we can put it in the report and say, oh, you know, they did this volunteer work and it looks really good. But if you just say, oh yeah, I did that for a year and I don't have that information, I don't have any way of verifying it, I'm not putting it in there. Because you're gonna tell me you went and saved the world, and I can't verify it. I'm not gonna tell anybody it was true because I don't know. So good question. Have that ready too. We ask for a supervisor and coworkers for volunteer work as well. Let's see. I already told you to think about the whole process as your test. Because the whole thing is, let's see what else. Don't leave anything out. So again, back to that. A lot of people are either eliminated, we actually disqualify them, or they just aren't hired because of things they've omitted, not because of what they actually did. There's a lot of things that people are afraid to admit, so they don't list it. We find out they did it, and it isn't because you did it that you got eliminated or you got looked over. It was because you didn't admit it to us. One of my favorite sayings, integrity is one of the most important things. If not, I think it's probably our #1 liability. You're an attorney, you probably agree. Integrity is huge, and integrity is not a percentage. That was a quote I took out of somewhere, and I loved it. I'm like, it's not. You are 100% truthful about everything. Doesn't matter how little it is or how big you think it is. Be honest about it, be upfront about it, and it's probably not going to eliminate you. If it's on that list of disqualifiers that Ray went over on those misdemeanor arrests that can keep you out, then it might keep you out. Probably will keep you out. But other than that, just tell us what you've done. A lot of people have done silly things. Sometimes they're not even silly. Sometimes they're really serious things that you've done wrong. What have you done since? What happened because of it? Those are important to us, and we look at those things. So don't omit anything. And if during the process you go, oh my God, I didn't tell them about the time we TP'd the school. That's a chargeable offense. You can get charged with that. So it doesn't usually happen. Most cops aren't gonna, charge you with it. You usually get taken home, but it's still something you should put in there because it says any contact with police for any reason. We have this catch-all question. If you've talked to the cops, you gotta tell us, no matter what it was about. They interviewed you as a witness. There's one question that's a catch-all. If you've talked to the cops about anything, even if you weren't the suspect, you better answer yes to that question because we're gonna find out that you talked to them, and we're gonna say, why didn't you tell us? Well, I thought I wasn't. The question doesn't ask that. It says ever. So when you read that question, you'll know what one I'm talking about. So anyway, even something like TPing, put it in there. And if you remember it in the middle of the process and you're like, I didn't put that down, guess what? Once you've got your background investigator, we tell you, one of the first calls we have with you is when something comes up that you remember or somebody reminds you about, email me, tell me, call me, whatever, leave me a message and say, hey, I just remember my brother reminded me that we went and we did whatever it was. We stole a case of Coke from the 7-Eleven because it was outside. And I totally forgot about it, I didn't list it. Tell us whatever you remember whenever you remember it. The goal is when you take your polygraph examination, we don't want to find anything out after your polygraph that you didn't already disclose to us because then it looks like you intentionally withheld it from us, but once you were hooked up to the electrifying machine, it's painful too. I don't know if any of you've done it. No, it's really not, but they're great at finding that stuff. And most people will admit to it in the polygraph instead of lie about it because they're worried about it. And then we find out that you told the polygraph examiner you used marijuana 2 years ago. Like, why didn't you tell me? Oh, I forgot. You didn't forget that you used marijuana once 2 years ago. You just didn't tell me either because you were embarrassed or you thought it would eliminate you or something like that. That's when it looks like you're intentionally omitting something. Huge difference. It's our job when we're interviewing you and when we're talking to lots of people to try and figure out, is that something that you intentionally omitted or not? What we're finding out goes in the report. Selection committee sees it. Let's see, I already told you read and follow all the instructions. That's gotta be the number one pet peeve of backgrounders. I can tell you when we open up a PHQ and we go through it, and you've listed one email for 15 different, there's one email out of 15 different people you've provided us information for, we're like, really? I can't even get going on your background until I have that. That's our primary way of initial contact with everybody that you list. So it's a very frustrating, annoying thing because I know that you just didn't do your job. That shows me how much interest you have in this job. Your interest has to be more than my interest in you getting the job, which doesn't show that when that's what we find. The polygraph booklet, when you go in for that, they're gonna have you fill out a big booklet. It's gonna ask you questions we haven't asked you yet. So when that happens and you go, did I remember to tell them that? I don't even think that was a question. There's some embarrassing questions on there. I get embarrassed when I read some of the questions in the polygraph. There's some things that I go, people do that? Okay. If something comes up in that, you let us know. It's still before you're interviewing and we still go, oh, thank you for letting us know. I filled the polygraph booklet out and this didn't come up anywhere else, but now I have it. So tell us when those things
Let's
come up.
touch base real quick on polygraph.
Yeah.
Probably not many. Anybody take a polygraph in here? Oh my gosh. You all took your polygraphs for PD? For the criminal
Internship.
charges
Yeah.
last week or?
Internship.
Internships, okay. So keep in mind on the police department that on the polygraphs, what we're looking for is the book and the background. So the book you fill out in the polygraph is different than the book you filled out in the background.
That 85, 95 page
Right.
one?
And we're going to look for similarities, or what we're really looking for is differences. Did you cough up finally on a polygraph because you know you're going to get hooked up to the wire versus you didn't cough up when Tina gave it to you? And when I ran the unit, they came and told me, hey, finally. So in a sense, when we finally put the gun to your head, did you tell us something? And we want to know way earlier that you're going to be honest, but you finally coughed it up here that you did this or that just before you got hooked up to the polygraph. Now the polygraphist is going to give you a book, you're going to fill it out, and then they're going to hook you up the machine. And they're going to ask you 4 or 5 times at least, is there anything else you want to add? Anything else? Because what they're trying to do is any more information they're trying to dig up. Because all the machine tells you is your heart rate go up or down. And the tax and all this, they don't really work. I think there was one that worked 20 years ago, but they figured that out. It doesn't work anymore. And so all they're really looking for is is your heart rate and are you acting differently when you ask this question. But they can't tell you if you're lying. It doesn't. It's just showing that you have a physical symptom when we ask you this question. So we really don't throw you out on that one question. What we're looking at is there some deception, and can we make you tell us what it is? And we're pretty convincing on, hey, you know what, your breathing went up here. Is there anything else you want to tell us? Okay, it's on my mind, I'll tell you. Usually that's what happens. Heck, I had people tell us, amazing stuff. And then when we get it, then we look and say, why did you tell us now? Because I'm trying to tell you the why because it's important for you to know the why. The why is, why did you get thrown out? It wasn't because you did that and you're going, I got thrown out because that's why I'm never going to tell you. That's not the reason you got thrown out. I had a guy throwing, bowling balls off the college, not this one, but the college roof. I thought that was pretty bad. I got drunk and thought it was a pretty cool thing to do to smash cars. Not why you got thrown out. Of course, that is a felony. But why you got thrown out was because he didn't tell us till he finally, in a sense, put the gun to his head and he finally coughed it up. Why is that important? Because if I asked you a question when you're out on the street, I want to know the freaking truthful answer right away. And I don't want to drag it on for 3 weeks when you finally go to IA and you finally tell somebody the truth. I need to know it right then because if we go to court, we need to make sure we have our ducks in a row and everything's correct. And that's what we're looking for, is it being deceptive or not. So that's why it's important that you fill out the 90-page document right the first time, because they're going to ask you again with a polygraph. Then they're going to hook you up. So that's the reason that I think it's important to at least know, why are we doing a polygraph? And what's the reason? Really, because most people cough up things that they wouldn't cough up before. I think I don't know what the percentage is, I think there's a number associated with how many people actually take it and how many people actually add stuff to the polygraph. And I bet you it's quite a number.
And I can tell you, something that's changed since the lieutenant was overseeing it too, and it was because the selection committee really wanted to know, on the background report that we submit for each applicant, there's lots of different tables within it. One of them is a criminal history table. There's 2 different tables within that page. One is for undetected criminal activity, and one is for detected criminal activity. Detected could have been you You got in a fight in high school and got suspended for a day. That's detected criminal activity. Maybe you didn't even get charged with it, but you could have been charged with it. It was fighting. And it was detected, even though the cops maybe didn't get involved, but it was detected. Somebody caught you and you got some kind of consequences. Undetected was underage drinking and never got caught for it. And that can go on the undetected table. We have 2 different tables now. Then within each of those tables, so we might list underage drinking in the undetected table. But then there's a column within that table that says, where was this information first disclosed by the applicant? We can say, and what we want to see is in the PHQ, the personal history questionnaire, is where they first disclose that information to us. It might not be until what we call an integrity interview. You will have an integrity phone interview with your background investigator right at the very beginning of your background. That's your place to, oh, I forgot this and I want to add this, and they're going to give you a lot of opportunities. They're going to go through a bunch of questions with you just over the phone to give you more opportunities to come clean on some stuff or just things you didn't remember. So it might say integrity interview on that column. And then there's the times when it says records checks. You didn't tell us about it, but we found it when we were checking records, and we found it in there. Or it might say polygraph examination. It's only going to say one thing because you can only disclose it initially in one place. So there's a column for that specifically because our selection committee wants to know. When did they first tell us about it? It's important. It's like Lieutenant said. That makes a big difference. You know, it might be some dumb little thing, but when you disclosed it to us is important. So keep those things in mind.
Can I add something to that?
Sure.
The reason they go through all this is because your credibility in court trumps almost everybody else. Judges, juries, and everybody will believe you. If your commander, Mike is a ship commander, he calls you in and he says, what happened on this call? And you say, this, and this happened. He's automatically believing that's the straight story. And the department, and as you guys all probably know, I represented police officers in internal affairs complaints. And they will overlook a lot of mistakes, but they won't overlook lying. And we used to refer to that as administrative felony. If they catch you lying in a police report or to your supervisor, that pretty much will end your career because they trust you so well. You go on these calls, you're by yourself, something happens, and they have to depend that you will tell them the truth, whether it's good or bad, that something happened and what it was. And so they value that, they being the police department, values that more than almost anything. You go out and you make the wrong arrest, you don't have enough PC to search a car, but you do it anyways. As long as you're honest, they will work with you on that stuff. I mean, really, they don't cut your head off on that.
No, you're too valuable. For one, it costs us way too much. The length of time, the money, to get you through the academy and get you out. We'll do anything. And I honestly mean, I think just about anything, which includes a lot of training to get you up to speed to where you're supposed to be if we find out something before we cut you loose. But if you straight out lie, there's really no reason to keep somebody because not only we can't trust you, attorneys on the other side will use it against us.
Because they have to report that. If you lie in a police report to your supervisor and you're charged with departing from the truth, you go on a list called the Brady list. And your name is on there, and whatever you lied about is disclosed to any defense attorney. And the list is, the way it's set up, is I don't care who I'm defending. If I'm a defense attorney and Matt gets arrested, I come up to him, I put in discovery, they give me that list with every name, even though you've never dealt with him. You're not an officer that ever arrested him, I still get your name. I know every case with every discovery, the Brady list comes out with everybody's name on it. And so, and pretty much they can't keep you because it makes it very difficult for you to testify in court. Because the first thing I'm asked, well, you like to lie a lot, don't you, officer? weren't you found guilty of departing from the truth and the police department sustained that you lied? So how do we know you're telling the truth now?
Right,
Ask
that's
that for
nothing
the
to do with the
jury.
case now, but they bring that up immediately.
Yep. And we're gonna talk about it too. So describe what the case was when you lied. And I think you guys have all been in my class when I talked about the biggest form of corruption is noble cause. Or an officer thinks he's doing the right thing by doing the wrong thing, lying on a search warrant, dummying up PC so they can make an arrest or search for drugs or narcotics. That's noble cause corruption is the most common form of corruption because you think you're doing the right thing, but by doing the wrong thing. So I'm just letting you know that she's talking about omission. The Department of Internal Affairs treats omissions just the same as a lie. If you fail to disclose something, they find out later that you didn't tell them, they don't care. It's the same as if that's a lie, and you are in serious trouble. If you stay over that, if they keep you for some strange reason, and that is rare. I mean, I've done hundreds, if not thousands, of internal affairs complaints for the last 2 decades. If they have kept people that have lied, I could put them on one hand and have fingers left over. That's how many. So not very often. Something happens where they decide to keep them, and it's rare. And if they do, that follows them for the rest of their life. One guy they kept, and he couldn't take it. In fact, he got into court, and the first thing the defense attorney did was start talking about him lying on a search warrant. And I can tell you, he couldn't bring himself to admit in front of the jury that he did it.
That's 5 years later. If I'm talking about the same one, we didn't share the Brady list as, I don't know if the word generously or legally we're supposed to. Probably that, the second one's probably better. And so 5 years later, after the officer was kept and admitted that he did wrong, he goes to court. I just happen to be a supervisor. Comes back, and I asked him a couple times before that, hey, how's it going? Because I figured I'm not an attorney, and I'm not that smart, but I thought that'd be the first thing I'd use. No matter what the case is, I'd say, did you ever lie before? Why should we believe you now? Same thing. He says, no one's ever brought it up. Well, when the Brady list, the rule came out from the DA's office to say, we haven't been doing this right, we better start doing it the right way, and start sending it out. Immediately after that, he had a court thing, nothing to do with what his previous allegations were, and he was found guilty of something minor. And the first part of the case, when the defense stood up and just beat him to death, I think it was through lunch because I had to read the transcript. It was just a beating, and the beating came because he didn't even then say, you know what, I made a mistake. So I don't know how we could. I still don't know how we could keep somebody, because if I was involved in the shooting, Tina had a sustained violation for lying, and Tina was my only witness that it was a good shooting. Man, how am I supposed to depend on her? I mean, it would be so difficult. So that's the important thing, I guess. I want to bring up. Please, no matter what it is, just cough it up. It's not gonna follow you. We stack that stuff up after you're hired, and we send it off to a company, and they store it away forever. But nobody reads that polygraph. It's a done deal. Just cleanse your soul and put it all down. But
That's why, and that's the purpose of that, is they have to depend. I mean, you can sit there and lie about how many fish you caught the last tournament, or, what a great football player you were in college, that kind of stuff. But when the sergeant or the lieutenant calls you in and says, I need to know what happened, at that point, you are as accurate as you absolutely can be. There is and you leave nothing out. Everything goes on the table right then. Because they have to know. They're not going to walk into the chief the next day and say, hey, we had an incident last night, but this is what happened. The chief's going to take that at face value. Because they know whatever they read in the papers, only about a third of that is true. And it usually starts just with the date and maybe some people's names. And that's about it. So they know that, and they want to know what really happened. And they're going to call Mike in. He's a shift commander. They're going to expect him to know. And they say, what happened to your guy last night? And he's going to depend on you, if you're his guy, to be telling him the absolute truth. No matter how it puts you in. If it puts you in a bad light, okay, we all make mistakes. I've been suspended. I got my own board of rights, and I got hammered. But one thing they did say was, we liked it that you told the truth, because I called this guy some rather choice names. And I put that in my response, that I called him, I won't use the terms now, but that I did respond with some verbiage that probably was not good. And that, yes, I did throw this guy, and his feet did hit the ceiling. when he was flying through the air. They had a picture of his footprint, so that would have been hard to deny, but. So I caught some time off with that, but they complimented me on my border rights because my version of what happened was almost identical to what the witnesses were. They still suspended me, so I still got, you know, my butt kicked over it, but they were happy that they were able to do that. So I didn't get it as bad.
I think it's interesting to note too, when you said, you know, if you do depart from the truth and you lie, you're probably gonna end your career. He didn't just say job. That's your career.
Yeah,
Because
you're
one
not
of
gonna
our,
hire someplace else.
yeah, one of our jobs as a backgrounder, we get lateral applicants, or even if they don't qualify as a lateral, but they've worked for another agency, we're gonna find out if they've departed from the truth. We're gonna get their IA records, we're gonna find out all this stuff. There's not an agency that's gonna hire you, and it's for those same reasons. You can't go testify in court and represent that agency. So you've effectively ended your career in law enforcement, not just your job with that agency. So it's huge, huge. I don't think we can reiterate that enough. Financial information. If you are applying for a sworn position, so like the CSO positions or the intern positions, and by the way, those intern polys you took and backgrounds you might have done, nothing like what you go through for a sworn position, so just be prepared for more. They ask different questions, there's more forms to fill out. But for financial, and we only do that with sworn applicants, we're gonna ask you every bill that you have that information ready. We're gonna ask you how much are you paying for rent monthly, how much are you, just everything you're spending money on, how many times have you been late on payments, how many bad checks have you written, it bounced because you just weren't a good bookkeeper or whatever. You're gonna have to provide us all that information. We're gonna verify it with your banks. We're gonna pull your credit reports. We're gonna do all those things to verify that the information you're giving us is accurate. Every credit card that you have, tell us about it, even if it has a zero balance. Because you could go out tomorrow on a zero balance card and charge it up to the 1,500 limit or whatever it has. So we're gonna ask you for all that information. So collect that information, keep it. I always, on a side note, like to remind people that, especially if you're young, you might not have been doing this yet, but check your credit reports at least once a year. You can do that free. There's 3, in fact, there might be 4 major credit reporting companies now that you can free get a credit report. That's the way a lot of victims find fraud. They find identity theft. They're like, I don't have that account. Well, it's on your credit report. It's your account as far as the credit card companies are concerned, even if you're lucky enough that whoever did it is paying it. It's on your credit report. You need to know about it. Because I can't tell you how many applicants, we have your credit report in front of you when we bring you in for your background report. And if I find 3 credit cards, you tell me, you know, they're not listed, and I say, how can you even list these? And you go, well, let me see that. I don't have, what? And sometimes those too can be, if you had a joint account with your parents, if it's something you never closed, your name's on it. Those credit people, I think they do better backgrounds than we do. They're like all over that stuff. It sticks with you. So make sure you're pulling that just for, if no other reason, make sure not a victim of identity theft.
Do you need
So,
our W-2s by any chance?
to what?
Do you need like past W-2s by any chance?
No. Nope, don't make you do that. If you're military, we're gonna have you get your OMPF, your official military personnel file. So, yeah.
Back to the credit. So when you're saying if we're joint with our parents, you want to know about that.
Yeah, because it's gonna show up
Somehow
on
they
your-
put us on, but we don't use it.
Yeah, yeah. So,
Okay.
and it could be, and we're not gonna fault you. If we find that and you tell someone, we're gonna say, hey, ask your mom about it, because
Okay.
your name's on it. So you need to find out, and you're gonna get back with us and say, yeah, mom told me, but she didn't want me to know because I'd go charge it up. But she wanted to build my credit. Some parents do that. I've had applicants that have had absolutely 0 credit cards, and I get the credit report back and there's like nothing on it, and I'm going, and they think that's good, and I go, oh dude, might be easy, makes my job easy, but you need credit. You gotta go get a card even if you pay it off, because that's gonna bring your mortgage rate down, your interest rates down on stuff that you're gonna end up getting eventually someday in your life. So I'm not saying go get a bunch of credit cards and charge them up, but have one and charge a few things on it and pay it off monthly, and that's gonna give you good credit. Not a big deal with us, but it will affect you someday in your life, you'll see.
Again, for the why. Why do we check your credit?
Oh, yeah.
Because we want to see if you're could be bribed, or could be you need the money so bad you could steal. And we've had officers definitely steal because they were hurting them so bad. And we've seen it in the background, and we decided not to hire. Not that we look at and judge what your bills are, that's up to you. But if it's so bad to your credit that you're not doing stuff, are you more of a liability for us to take you on, and it looks like you might be desperate, and the money that we're paying you would not even come close. So that's another reason. So that's why we check that.
On top of that, for a why, it also shows responsibility and good judgment. And if we see, because we have a lot of different reports that we pull, and if we see that you've written a bunch of bad checks and you're delinquent on several accounts, and we find you've got a bunch of charges up, that, you know, these cards are maxed out, or you've charged off a bunch of accounts and things like that. We also know if you're driving a 2015 BMW and you have a Harley Davidson in the garage and you own a timeshare, and we go, is that good decision making, having all these things, and these are the things you're spending your money on? And we're gonna ask you, and we're gonna ask family members and people that know you, you know, what are they like, what are they spending on, what do they do for their hobbies, and when they're telling us, you know, all these elaborate hobbies you have, and we know your credit's really bad, we're gonna ask you about that. We're gonna give you a chance to explain to us, why is this part of your life? If you're making poor decisions on this part of your life, what makes us think you're not gonna make poor decisions in your career that you're trying to go into? So it might even not just be because we're thinking you might steal, but you're not making good decisions in your own life at this point. So keep that in mind and try and keep your credit good. But there again, sometimes we find out when we're asking people, what are all these charges? Well, I was taking care of my elderly grandma, and I couldn't afford it. I was trying to make her car payments and mine, and we verify all that kind of information. When I find out your grandma died 5 years ago, yes, and you told me it was last year, that's not good. But, you know, things like that, we look into that, and they consider those. And, you know, bankruptcies don't keep you from being hired too. We find out why. Why was there a bankruptcy? Again, was it poor decision making? Were you living outside of your means because you thought that was the cool thing to do? And how long ago was it? What have you done since? So those kinds of things. Email address. The email address you provide us, it's like Ray was talking about. That guy missed the test because he didn't get his email. You make sure it's an email that you check regularly. And as backgrounders, that's another big annoyer. I email you, and I tell you right away when I'm talking to you on the phone initially, hey, is this a good email address for you? Are you going to check it regularly? Because I've got 9 other people I'm doing a background on. I don't have time to just keep calling you and asking you for that information I need. I'm going to email you, and I want a response as soon as you get it. Even if that response is just, got your email, I'm looking into it. I'll get back to you. That lets me know you got the email. I know you got it, and you're looking into it. And then I do want a response as soon as you're able to get whatever information it is. If that email address is not appropriate to be giving out at a job, consider getting another email address. So, you know, if it's copkiller@gmail.com, and you go, would that look bad? Think about what your email address is. We get some really funky, weird email addresses, and we're going, they put that down there. Now, we are going to ask you to list every email address you've ever used that you can remember in your PHQ. But the one that we're communicating back and forth, the one that pops up on my desktop when you do respond to me, I don't want it to be something inappropriate. There's some really ugly ones out there. Don't make that be the one that you provide us to stay in contact with, but make it one that you're checking all the time.
What about social media? Facebook?
And social media. Be aware of your social media presence. And that is in every aspect of that. That's a huge, broad term. It could be in chat groups. It could be on your dating site. It could be on Craigslist. It could be on your Facebook account. It can be on Twitter, Instagram, Flickr. Everywhere that you're going out and posting things, even if you think they're anonymous, think about if that background investigator has a screenshot of what I just put on there and she puts it in front of me, am I going to be embarrassed to tell her what I meant by that or to discuss that with them? Or is that something I'm like, yeah, no, that's how I feel, and that's okay, then fine. But think about that for the rest of your lives, because those things don't go away. Clean up your stuff now. We can still find cached things even. So even if you're cleaning it up, sometimes we find things. So think about what you're posting from here out if you don't already. Plus, when you do become an officer, that stuff can be brought into court the same as everything else. If you posted, let's say, something racist on some chat site, and some defense attorney finds it 10 years later, and it was before you were a cop, and a defense attorney that's getting paid a ton of money for that client finds it, and your client happened to be that race, and that client is saying you were racist and that's why you did it, that defense attorney can bring that up. Hey, is that your post from 10 years ago? Well, yes, but I don't feel that way anymore. Could damage the case. And I just actually went through a cyber vetting webinar that they provided for all the backgrounders, and they gave case after case after case of situations like that, where officers have lost their job from things that they posted pre-employment. We try and find those things so we don't actually hire you in the first place. But we might not find everything. It can come back to haunt you later.
I have a question.
Yeah.
So you're talking about all the social media stuff. Are we gonna be given an opportunity to provide that to you, or are you just gonna like rando search Facebook?
We're gonna do it all. We're gonna give you the opportunity. We're gonna ask you for every site that you belong to, for every, in the PHQ again, we're gonna ask you to list all that stuff. But we do our own investigations as well.
Alright.
And, you know, sometimes you forget play. There's so much available, especially with apps on phones and things like that now, that you may forget some of those things. But we're going to do our own as well. And then we understand, too, that people create fake things. So, again, that's our job to try and verify. I mean, Donald Trump has like 50 different Facebook sites. I don't know if it's that many, but it's a ton. There's only one real one. He's not responsible for everything on the other ones. There's people that post stuff. And we do realize that. We've had incidents where, you know, someone gets it. That's why you never want to give your passwords out, too. It's your best buddy and your roommate at the time. Yeah, go ahead and use my Facebook. Well, you might not realize you pissed them off, and then they went and posted something that's on your Facebook, and I find it a year later. I never posted that. So we're going to try and verify that kind of information. So let's see. And I think that was actually the last thing. Oh, no, my last thing, big, bold. Well, it's big and bold for me. Don't use marijuana. I know he told you that. It's legal. Don't use it. That's probably the #1 category of reasons right now that applicants, not just sworn, but civilian applicants, are disqualified. Usually it kicks you out before you ever make it through the application part, way before you get to backgrounds. But if you do manage to get through to backgrounds, probably means you lied somewhere to begin with. And we got it, and we're going to disqualify you right away. If it's within that 18 months, we had a lady, rubbed it on her knees. It was a topical, but it had THC in it. She drug tested, it could have been positive. It was THC. She knew, she got it at a medical marijuana place. She didn't consume it, she didn't inhale it. She did rub it on, and yes, that disqualified her. It was a civilian position, but again, we're looking at those things. We're asking you for those things. Don't take the chance. If this is the kind of job you want, just say no. And there's a lot more jobs than just a police job that's going to eliminate you from. We have a ton of government contract agencies in Colorado Springs, High Dollar, Lockheed Martin. I can't think of all the big ones. There's a lot, and they pay way more than us, but not that I want you to go there. They don't let you do that either. You know what? You can't. And even construction jobs. We're seeing a lot of our construction jobs go out of state. They have to hire people from other states because people can't drug test without being having marijuana on board. And that company is the one that's going to get sued when you have the forklift accident and you kill the kid. And that family's not going to sue you. They're going to sue the company. So is the company going to take that liability on? They're not going to have employees that drug test and keep them either if they drug test positive. So keep that in mind. Legal or not, it is not alcohol. It stays in your system. People, I think, equate that nowadays because it's legal. Oh, it's like alcohol. It's not. And if you tested positive for alcohol when you had an accident, you'd be a liability there too. But most people are like, oh, you know, well, that was Saturday. This is Tuesday morning. We're probably good. Hopefully by then. But with marijuana, it's not. Or any other illegal drugs for that matter. So just keep that in mind. So that was a long part about backgrounds, but that's because that's my passion. I want to get really good PHQs from all of you. You can even put that in their note. If Tina Whistler gets this, you know, thanks for all the tips, or you can tell whatever background you got. I filled it out really good because Tina Whistler said, then they'll thank me, so I appreciate that. Yeah. Any other questions on backgrounds? All right. Okay.
All right, so just a couple things and we'll move on to your oral. But remember, campus police are police. So don't forget about that too. It's, when they ask if you've been contacted by the police, that counts as well. And that's usually alcohol, stuff like that, but make sure you put that down. I can't, and I just want to put one more plug in. Please look at your social media, your Facebook, your LinkedIn. Let's clean it up now. It's okay. You know, and we're also looking for things like, I don't know if you still use the big old beer bong and stuff like that, and you know, your parties, you know, your college parties. Just clean up those pictures. Take care of it, because we will look at it. And then the easiest thing to do, and here's the tip number 2, is just open up another email. Just for these, we don't expect you just to apply for us. So you do, that's great. We expect good applicants to apply for a number of different departments. Just open one up just for my applications for police. Yeah.
Will we be able to use our existing work emails with our agencies?
Like when you're with us? No.
Like
I'm sorry.
I'm interning right now at the Gold Hill substation.
No.
Okay, so we'd have to use
So
it.
prefer you to keep that. If you got an email, that's for work.
Okay.
So yeah.
Plus, you wouldn't be able to check that regularly because you only get to check that when you're there.
Okay.
So this is something, whatever you're going to get your Gmail on your phone or whatever, we're going to expect you to reply, not every Tuesday when you're there volunteering.
And be careful when you do stuff like that, because other departments, including ourselves, say, why is he using a work email for applying for other police jobs or police jobs? So that's something you need to consider. Hey, I wanted to talk real quick about the oral boards. And I think it's important that we at least go over this. I'm going to sit down because I'm old. All right. So when you take an oral board, let's go through this if you haven't taken one before. I won't even get into the dress, but just know that you're going to go into an oral board with different ranges of people that will be scoring you. So the ranges will be from probably, 30 years old all the way into the 50s. So dress appropriately for anybody in there is what I guess I'm saying. So what might be appropriate for a 20-year-old going into an interview might not be what a 50-year-old or so would think is appropriate. So just keep that in mind and do with it what you want. But I would dress so all people in that oral board would think, hey, looks fine, moving on. Now we don't score you on that, but certainly it will stick in the back of the mind, and if it's between a high score being 4 and 1 drop lower, it might drop you down just because it's in the back of your mind, but we don't have a place that says, how did you dress, right? But just keep in mind that that is looked upon. You know, it's like, hey, you come in, you look appropriate. A couple other things is the older people that are looking at you, did you prepare yourself for the oral board? There's 2 things they're looking at. One is obviously dress, but also did you clean up, and I don't know if you got a haircut, your shoes are shined. People look at you as you come in. I know it sounds almost like, really, does that matter? It does matter. It really matters in the police department because we look at each other all the time and we evaluate. So it's important to us all, a lot like the military. It's really important. So just prepare yourself just to walk on in. All right, there'll be 2 to 3 people in your oral board. Sometimes we do it 2, just depending on how many oral boards we're running. They'll run multiple oral boards at the same time. They'll bring you into an oral board. When I say multiple, meaning you're going to go into one of the panels. Just be you and the 2 or 3 panel members. Panel members will be sworn personnel with maybe some HR mixed in there as well. So you might have 2 sworn, 1 HR, or something like that on your panel. Again, when you walk in, please consider your audience. Always walk in and look. They're going to introduce you, look them straight in the eye, and shake everybody's hand. And then normally you wait to be seated. You just stand there, and if for some reason they forget, just say, do you mind? And that just shows respect to the panel members. Okay, that's fine. They will read you something. They'll read you a script. Remember, it's not going to be a conversation like you might do at a different company. This is all scripted because we have to use a consultant who has this test, and all parts of this test has been vetted in court already. So I can't just go off on the cuff like I am now. I just can't. You have to read the script, and everybody sticks to the script. And we don't go very often on follow-up questions unless they allow it. All right. So if you asked a question in there, like, can you explain that? What does that term mean? Sorry, I can't explain that. I can reread the question, but that's it, right? So understand that.
What about if they wanted you to I don't know how to say this, like after it's over
Okay.
and they had a question about one of your answers, do they do that or
No.
they just leave it there?
Yeah,
It's
we don't
over.
really ask at the end of ours, like, we might say, do you have anything else you want to offer? But it's not, there's really no conversation that goes on, like, hey, how do you feel about that? Hey, pretty good. There's nothing like that at all.
Well, no, just they wanted you to say they didn't understand your answer, so they wanted you to.
No, they don't. Good point. So we can encourage, like, man, you should get some more out. I'd like to know some more about that. Unless it's actually written in there, we could follow up, or we could say, could you expand on that? Very rarely do we do that. What we do is we take what you say and we score exactly what you say. So this is really important because you have to. That's where you start crafting out your answers. Even though you say, well, how can I do that? Because I have no idea what they're going to ask me. There are things that they're going to ask you. You absolutely know. Every department's going to ask you. It's a candid question. It's actually kind of hard to score on, but we open it up. Open it up with an easy one. That's what we normally do. Why do you want this job? Or why do you want CSPD? And why this versus other? Very general, easy one. The easiest and the best way I found that people do this is you write out the 3 or 4 different questions that you know is going to be asked, and you practice them. So the first one would be, why Colorado Springs Police Department? I would probably, if it was me testing today, I'd probably have done some research on the internet. Why? Why do I want it? And we like the answers that, what I'm looking for, I should say, is the components. So the components are experience, job knowledge, communication, motivation, right? Usually those are the components that most departments are using. It's like, hey, how am I going to score this person? But what I'm really looking for in an answer about my department is not why you want it, but how do I know you're going to stay here? You know, and how are you better than the other people out there? So what am I looking for is what's your tie here? So, and then what got you started? So usually you tie almost every answer with some type of story. Really is the best way to go about it. So instead of a yes, no, or a real blankety type of answer, you always try to tie it to some type of story that you might have. Well, I'm going to be honest with you, and it has to be honest. I'm going to be honest with you. My uncle was a police officer, and as I was growing up, I saw it. I thought it was very exciting. I got to do this, in the military. Really enjoyed it, and then you move on from there, right? But then you connect it to Colorado Springs, and then whatever you find out about Colorado Springs, tie it into it. I know Colorado Springs is accredited, and whatever you can find out that you think, and it's my hometown. I know I'm going to be a police officer, but this is my hometown. I want to be a police officer here. That's the one that's the hook. Because you really need to look at what we're looking for, not what you're giving, but what do I want in this question, all right? Then we went to the questions that I really want to concentrate on because it's the ones that really threw people. You have that opening, that's fine, and you know that. You should practice that. If we ask that in a week from now and you're going to test in a week, you should have written down my openings on a 3x5 card and have it smooth as silk coming out of your mouth. Really should. That's pretty silly if you kind of stumble through that. All right, here's the ones that get people. How the Colorado Springs Police Department has gone and how our fire department has also gone is tell me a time when type of questions. All right, kind of a behavioral type of thing we're looking at. Kind of gotten away from a lot of the scenarios and the candy bar, stealing, that can be in there, but really looking at tell me a time when. All right, and what these do is these make you think, but also it really concentrates on the areas that we're looking at. So here's an example. So tell me a time, and everybody can, so you don't have to be a police officer. People think, well, you have to be a police officer, you're going to get an advantage. Not really. So tell me a time when you took charge of a situation and what happened. Kind of open-ended. And you're going, well, geez, I never even thought about that. You should think about that. You should think about a time when you took charge or took a leadership role and have that in your hip pocket. You should practice that. Tell me a time when you failed at something. But when I fail at something, what do I do? It's kind of like a Batman thing, pick yourself up. How did you succeed? What happened with the failure, we want to know. And then how did you turn it around and succeed? Always want to know the succeeding part, right? You had to fix it somehow. All right? And then tell me a time when you made an unpopular decision. Something like that. So those three are really good to have. Everybody has them, but everybody will want to know it. Because I want to know if you failed and you just crumbled. Okay. I never ever want to hire somebody that's been on such a great journey that they've been like I don't know, cheer captain and went up and all these things perfect up to the top of the hill, and everything's been perfect straight A's all the way through. Never had an incident, because when they fail, when they come out, they'll just be crushed. Everybody knows that life's like this. They're going to failures, they're going to come up. Life's like this. All right, so tell me a time when you took charge. Well, let me tell you. I've been working at Taco Bell for 6 months now, and they made me head fry cook. All of a sudden this one day, I know it doesn't seem like much, but if you're the fry cook, this is really important at let's say McDonald's, because McDonald's makes better fries. And so, so we're talking about McDonald's, and all of a sudden we were out of fries. And I went back to get fries, and somebody forgot the fries. We didn't order the fries. So what did I have to do? Well, I had to make a decision right then and tell everybody, well, I sent somebody out, made a call, sent somebody out to get fries at the nearest McDonald's, which is 6 blocks down, and then we gave everybody a free burger that was in line and let them know we're really sorry about that, but how about this? So I took charge of the situation. I told my manager what happened. We recouped the money by charging extra on the fries the next day, but we found out what the problem was, that Joey just forgot to order fries. So eventually Joey was fired and I got that job. But whatever it is, see what I'm saying is that it doesn't matter that you were police involved. It doesn't have to be a police story. Matter of fact, I think the chief was, I used to have to present these when everybody came up when I ran the background, and the chief was extremely impressed with the young man of Taco Bell. He said he couldn't believe how he was running the front of he happened to go in there that day, and then of course we brought up the story. He goes, I was there. He ran the whole place. And it wasn't that, and I had laterals over here and military personnel here with huge amounts of experience. But it doesn't diminish the experience that you have, is what I'm saying. So whatever experience you have, and I bet you there's a huge amount of stories you can say, well, yeah, I had to take a lead on a project. My instructor, Rich Radabaugh, gave me this project, and we had to go in groups, hate groups, had to go and work with 7 or 8 different people, and sure enough, I don't know if you've worked in groups, but there's always 2 or 3 that you have difficulty with. And so what I had to do is somebody had to take the lead. I called these people, made sure they had the meeting set, and we met, and we whatever it is. And the project was failing, but then all of a sudden, when I took the lead, we actually got back on course, and we were able to turn it in, gave a great presentation, and we all got A's, or A+ for me, because I did more. But whatever it is, see what I'm saying? Is you have to think about these things ahead of time, because if they hit you with a story like they do, tell me a time when you had difficulty with another employee. Oh gosh, I've never had difficulty. Next question, not going to score very well. Okay, because everybody had some difficulty, and it comes off the top of your head like, I should have used the other story, it was so much better. Because what I'm looking for is not that you had difficulty, but that you were able to work with an employee, right? Not that my boss had to make us get together in a room, because it came to fisticuffs, but I saw that we were having difficulty. The company was suffering from it. I took it upon myself to initiate some type of conversation to fix this, whatever it was. And you can say, hey, this is what it was. It doesn't matter what it was. And we were able to work it out between ourselves, and we're working fine now. Or they moved to Australia and it worked out even better. But see my point is what I'm saying? I know I'm using some horrible humor, but my point is that you have to think about these things ahead of time, because if you don't, it's not like a regular interview. They're going to ask you, tell me a time when. And you better start thinking in your head a couple of different things. A time when I was successful. I did a great job. This is how. This is struggles I had. This is how. Tell me a time when I failed. I want to know when you fail. Everybody fails. But then how did you fix it? And how do I know that you can do it every time now when you come on the department? Tell me a time when you had difficulty with an employee or a boss. Could be a boss. What logic did you use? And what I'm looking for is when I send you out on the street, can you do the same thing with, number one, your peers? When we're at odds end, can we get along? Am I adult enough to figure out this problem? And can I get along with people who are difficult? Tell me a time when you had a difficult customer and you had to work that out. That's a great one. Because we have difficult customers, and you probably didn't even consider that, but that's true in the police department. Firefighters very rarely have difficult customers. police officers, lots of difficult customers, lots. So that'd be something. So I would think about all those things, and then you know what you do is you write them out, and then flip the 3x5 card over, and these are just tips. Put your answer on the back in bullet format. Please do not try to memorize, because every single time somebody tries to memorize stuff, they stumble. So like I'm ad-libbing now, probably sounds more free than if I'm reading and all of a sudden I stumble, or I'm trying to think word for word. You stumble. Don't want to stumble. You want to just say, okay, 3x5 card, bullet points. I want to bring up these 3 points on this story about my leadership. Or these 3 points on the time I failed, but I was able to pick up the pieces. These 3 points. Take a 3x5 card when you go on your walk, your bike ride, between Netflix, rehearse in your head. Then, you want to score better than everybody else? You take your phone out, because we all have iPhones now, right? And you put it over there, you hit record, and you ask yourself the question, you look into the camera, and you look like such a dork after you review it. But you do better and better and better as you do it. And you notice you're not playing much with your hands. I do it all over, but I'm not testing. You'll sit there like this, and you'll figure things out. And you'll sit, and you'll figure out, okay, where I'm comfortable. Do I need to take a breath here? I can relax. Okay, this is the question about leadership. Got it. I have a story for that. This is the question about this. I can answer that. Practice that. It'll make the world a difference. You'll see from night and day people who have taken these things seriously and said, you know what, I'm going to go ahead and practice a few. If it's with my significant other, my roommate, whatever, and then I'm going to even take it a step further and put my little camera up there and practice a couple times before I go. It makes a world of difference, and I'm telling you, I didn't learn that right away, but I certainly learned that as a promotional process came up, and people were telling me, I was like, wow, how'd you score like 9,000 points more than me? You know, besides the gray hair, I thought I had everything with you. You know, and it makes a difference. It really does. You'll see that you get more and more comfortable in a group setting, you know, with 3 people staring at you. Keep in mind, do not get flustered when they're doing this, because I'm a terrible note taker, and we're all looking down and we're trying to write down what you said. Always bring up things that you did that will sell you. I was in the Boy Scouts. Then I moved on to the Eagle Scouts. You know, all these things that you don't think, they're not going to think that's important. That's huge. Anything to do with leadership, participation, teamwork. I wrestled for 4 years in high school. Okay, so what? But just connected to something. There I learned what? I learned teamwork. I know the police department's a huge team, and this is a benefit that I'm bringing to you because I've been on a team for 4 years. You know, those are the things that we're looking for. Is if you can connect the dots, it's really huge, and I think it's important to bring it on because we need you. And I'm not giving you anything I wouldn't give anybody else, but if you take the time to look at and come here and say, hey, how do I do really well because I've never taken this test? I'm going to give you everything I got. I'm going to say, here it is. But you have to take the next step and say, I'll practice it. I'll do whatever I need, and then you'll score well. And then, you know, choose whatever department you think's best. I assure you, all police departments and our fire department are scoring people this way and having oral boards just because we share people, and I sat on the fire department's oral board just recently. Exactly the same thing. Exactly the same type of questions. I have so many jokes I want to tell right now about firefighters, but I'll leave it alone. But it's pretty much the same scenarios, stuff like that. But it's oral boards are the same type of thing. They're different than the military. Military's a little bit different, but it's closer because you have a panel. But usually you're reciting things, you're coming up. But we're never going to ask you, recite this, tell us the law on this. I don't know anybody who would do that. You don't need to know that.
I have a question
Yeah.
for you. So I recently did do an oral board, and the most awkward part, and how do we mitigate this? The most awkward part was going from question to question. So they'd ask a question, and I'd get done with an answer. I'd sit there and stare at them for a couple seconds because, you know, they were still thinking about it. But it was at that point where I was like, well, how do you end your statement? So you're telling your story and you're yada yada yada, I'm super special. What do you say after that to say, okay, this is my answer, this is what I think?
Right, usually nothing. You don't say I'm done or I've completed anything like that. Usually when you sit back and you're telling your story and you're just finishing up and say, man, I just want to let you know that Mike Lux would be the best person for this and this is why. And however you tied it up at the end, there you go. What they're doing is they're writing. Normally what they'll do is they'll say, they look up at you, you just look back, smile, and they say, okay, thank you very much. and then they'll go on to the next question, because they're waiting for their cue, they know there's a silence, they're writing, and then the next guy's got the next question. They'll usually break it up. I don't think there's usually more than six questions usually. I don't know, about 6. So 2, 4, 6, so 2 apiece usually, and they have the opening.
Mike just
Okay.
took it, said there was 9.
Was there 9 on it?
Yep.
Yeah.
Wow, okay. Wow, that's
you
a
have
lot.
to answer 9 questions in half an hour.
Okay, so what we've done in the past, and correct me if they're doing it the same way now, is we would time you. You only have so much time. So we would say when you came in, at least on the ones that I did and the ones we're doing internally, I say, okay, I'd read a statement. Thanks a lot for applying for the Colorado Springs Police Department. You're applying for the recruit position. So that way we're both in agreement. You're not applying for K-9 or SWAT, right? Okay. And then I'd go on to say, there'll be 9 questions. Oh my gosh, there'll be 9 questions asked by the panel members, because we already introduced ourselves. You'll have 25 or 30 minutes to complete this, whatever the time they decided. You'll have 25 minutes to complete all the questions. And this is the important part, you'll have to keep track of your time, or you'll be responsible for your time. Is that correct?
Well, I don't know if they did it with you, but with me, they didn't say any of that, because when you first walked in, you got handed 2 pieces of paper, you had to read through it and sign it, and basically it stated that you had nine questions to answer in half an hour. Any of these questions, I couldn't even get through it because my guy called me back before I could even read all the way through, so I was just like, you know what? Yeah, so.
It's just the confidentiality agreement.
Yeah, that,
and the
yeah.
waiver, but then it's just, they say like when you start, like it's, 2:30, and then they say when you end, like this time. They didn't say anything about like finish them in this time or anything.
Okay, so they say you start at 2:30 and they're saying you end, say, like 3 o'clock. So you got 30 minutes, just for an example. So if they say you end at 3 o'clock, you have 30 minutes, right? Okay, so they're adjusting a little bit. We would say you have 25 minutes. They're saying you're going to stop here. Doesn't matter. I mean, you've had basic math. And there's nothing wrong with it. I would use my stopwatch on my watch. I just click it over. I do that regularly on different panels. And I know in my head, I've got 25 minutes. So if I know I've got to get through these, be careful rushing too much. Sometimes people will rush at the beginning because, I can answer this one, this one, this one, and then you start slowing down. But it depends. It depends. Usually we do 6. 9 seems a little long. But honestly, what they're looking at is it's on you. It's on you to answer all questions in the time frame they give you. So, depending what they are, you might have to thin it down some. Again, you're competing with your peers that are doing the exactly same thing. So it's not just, we're messing with you alone. Everybody's getting the same thing. So if you can answer all 9, just think, hey, and I would do this then, since that's a pretty good tip. Write out 9 questions at home. See how long it takes you to answer them. And I wouldn't do an essay, but I'd practice those.
I finished kind of early.
Yeah,
like
I finished at about 26 minutes.
Did you really?
Yeah.
Okay, 26 out of 30 minutes?
Yeah.
Okay, that's not bad. We've had people do it in a quarter of the time, and it's like, we didn't get enough information. Just make sure that your rhythm and pattern are consistent, and that's what the practice will do for you, is that you're calm and you're talking and you're looking at them. And I know this comes out of one of the ladies who teaches quite a bit of the promotional stuff, but you know what? You just can't really have a bad day because you're not going to get an F. You can't fail it. It's not like a test that you're here and you're sweating it. All it is you're every question they're going to give you, you know the answer. It's not a question they're going to say, well, what statute is this under? Burglary. I don't know. It's not going to happen. Every single question they're going to give you, you already know the answer to. So just relax and then give the most thorough, best answer you can, and just try to always tie it back to some type of incident you can relate to. Say, well, I can tell you why I want to do this, because, or I have experience in that, by the way. I wrestled for 4 years or something like that, or whatever you can do to tie it in a little bit more than the candid answer. Why do you want to be a police officer? I'd like to help people. Next question, please. That's great. But really, well, what do you want to be a police officer? Well, I'll tell you. I want to help people. And let me tell you where I got that from. Then go into your story. And I get that from when I was 5 years old, and my uncle was a police officer, and I started seeing what he did. And I got to ride along with him. And I really got a real passion for this. Whatever it is, try to tie it in, because you're selling yourself to those people on the board. Fair? I know, sometimes it's difficult.
Well, and I'll tell you that whole failed, like, to give it. I had to spend about 30 seconds coming up with a legitimate answer without tripping up over myself. You know, that was the one that threw me the most off. And then I will say, bring up your internships. Just bring up that you're interning at the CSPD. Oh my God, that saves you for a little while. You know, that really does it. That shows that. Not only do you really have an interest, but when they do ask why do you want to work at the CSPD, you can bring up from the ride-alongs I've done and the internships, and the internship that I'm doing right now and the ride-alongs that I've done with my department. Let me tell you, this is why, and that just helps you so much. And then they'll go back to that. So you're interning at the CSPD currently. Okay, tell us about this. It's easy. That part's simple. Just try and keep everything else.
I think the internships are huge. Even if you didn't do it with us, it's huge. Because you're setting yourself above the person, nothing wrong with driving a forklift, but that's all they're doing, driving a forklift, and then they see the ad and come running down. You've done something more. So no matter where the internship is, and then if it's with us, it's even better. And then if you can throw out a name. Not that we like name dropping, and certainly don't throw it out if it's inappropriate, but you say, hey, I've been doing an internship up in sex crimes with Detective Sergeant, whoever it is, working directly for that person. That's great. I don't think that's a problem at all. And then what we do is we jot that down, and then we pass it on. We check on it. Hey, how's he doing? But it just shows that you're connected. And what we're trying to do is get people connected with us and stay with us. But that's kind of it in a nutshell. Is I really wanted to go over, because when we asked the questions last year, hey, tell me a time when, and you're right, it does throw people, because you're like, I thought you wanted to know I want to be a police officer. What does that have to do with when I fail? Tell me a time when you fail. Tell me a time when this and that. If you get those polished up, and you can add in those things that you're already doing here, I'm involved in the criminal justice program. I have whatever it is. You will score above, head over heels above the person with the forklift that didn't do anything, and the other people that you're competing against because they didn't think to bring that up, even though they have the same experience. They're just not bringing it up, and I can't score you on what I don't know, and nobody knows you. You're brand new, so they're going to score you on what they know. Fair? Does that sound right? Anything, Tina? Back there smiling, going maybe, kind of. Does that seem accurate?
Yeah.
Okay. All right, questions? Go ahead.
Do you have any more sample questions, just so we can kind of be prepared, kind of because I do realize sometimes they're like, tell me a time when, and you're like, oh my God, racing through your mind, I need to find an example.
You know what? I wrote down the unpopular decision. I like that one. You had to make when you had to had difficulty with either an employee or a supervisor. That's always one, because remember, it has to tie back to something. I'm tying back to teamwork. I'm tying back, can you get along with your peers or your bosses? Tell me a time when you had difficulty. Yeah, I had a boss who would, please be careful how you say things. I had a boss who was a jerk. What are you going to call me when you're working for me? Be careful on how you say. I had a boss that we had some difficulties, and you can talk like that, but be careful what you say. But tell me a time when, and always how you corrected it. I think that's the ones that I wrote down, and of course the failed. Tell me a time when you failed, because that one tells you how you fix it. Tell me a time when you made an unpopular decision. That comes up a lot more in I think supervisory roles, but even they could even bring it up, unpopular decision. Even in school. Tying your school. School is really important. If you're doing it, and the last thing I'll say is, if you're not, and nothing wrong with it, but if you're not just going to school here and then doing nothing else, maybe just going home, and you have all these other things going on, can you tell us about that? It's amazing how many people don't tell us that they're working, 30 hours a week, 40 hours a week, maybe even more, going to school full time, carrying a full load. Maybe you have a wife, a husband, and 3 kids. All that stuff is important. Maybe like Rich Radabaugh, who was working full time for us and going to law school. That's pretty darn impressive. But all that stuff, I'll throw in a bone for him because he's reading like 5 million pages a day. But what we're looking for is how do you put that stuff together? How do you keep stuff straight? And will you do that for us? Well, heck yeah. If you're going to school And nothing wrong if you're going to school and that's your focus right now and nothing else. But if you're one of the rest of us that were unlucky enough that had to pay for it or whatever it is, if you're going to school and you're doing all these other things, mention that. As soon as you can bring that up. Well, I'm going to UCCS, I'm taking 13 credit hours. Anything else that says, wow, this is a really responsible person. I'm working as a busboy down at whatever, at nights. I work 30 hours a week. And I'm also a member of whatever club it is. My gosh, that person's got it together. Pretty good. But remember the tell me the time when is the ones I practice. But think about those things. If you don't bring it in, I can't score you. And how much better it would be that you have all these things and you mention it, and you say, well, they wouldn't want to know. So what? Okay, maybe I didn't put it down. You're a member of the band, but maybe you said you're a member of a band for 4 years, and you've traveled and you learned what? How do you connect it? Well, I learned being part of a team and be able to coordinate and dedication after school. Whatever it is, tell me. Connect it. It doesn't matter what the thing is. Fair? What else? Is that it? All right.
Do you have anything?
Not much to add. The other thing is you want to be honest and open, I think, in these interviews. And, everybody's done something wrong in their lives that they're not real happy with, I think. Maybe some people aren't, but the list would be rather long for me. But, you always want to present that what you're giving them is the honest truth. I just can't stress that enough. Because they pick up on that. I mean, you got to remember these people that are doing these oral interviews have interviewed people, if not hundreds, thousands of people during their career in all sorts of situations, as witnesses, as victims, as just talking to a complainant that somebody has a complaint. And they pick up on cues. They pick up on cues when they feel that you're not being truthful or honest, or you're hedging, or you're making stuff up. And they're because you guys have all been through my interview and interrogation class, you understand that these guys have done it for years. Some of them are already detectives, and they've been trained even to spot. And you guys know about that. So you don't have to worry about it if you're being honest. You don't really have to worry about where am I looking, how's my hand gestures, am I hedging too much in my answers? If you're honest, it won't matter.
Yeah, honest for life. And give us a good one. Don't. I think this plays right off of what Rich was saying. If I tell you, tell me a time when you failed, and you said, well, one time I got a C on this report. Gosh, is that really devastating? I mean, that's the only thing you can think of. Give us something that you feel strongly about, whatever it is. And then just relax and pick it back up. Nothing wrong with taking a second too, and just thinking. You know what? I got one for you. Or I've got 2 stories real quick. Probably don't have much time if you have 9 questions, but and look them in the eye, and I like that. And just relax and tell them. You cannot fail. Matter of fact, you're there to impress. They're already impressed with you. They want you. They need you. We're already ready to score you as high as we can. Just go ahead and tell us. Think about that when you go in. Everybody wants you to succeed. Everybody does. Everybody wants you to score extremely well. Matter of fact, we're waiting for you to come on in. There's 3 of us waiting. This is the one. And we've got 50 slots available, and you're going to get one of them. You just have to go in and it's kind of a formality. Think of it that way. And just go ahead and blow our minds with a couple of great stories and honest answers and a calm and confident demeanor. We're good to go. So good. So we told you a couple things, I think, today. I'm hoping that we have our 9 or 10 applicants here that will press on, and you'll let us know later, hey, that worked out really good, or your instructors. And I think when you do the interviews now, and I've done mock interviews for the CSO program, and they've done really, really well. Matter of fact, the CSOs, last time, I think 6 were going to the academy now, and we have 6 testing now for the coming up academy that you're involved in. So I'm going to put a plug in. Here's a plug that I told my son the same thing. My son was testing, and I said, consider the CSO program, and here's why. For one, it's a part-time position, and they are doing absolutely 90% of the workload, really, that police officers are doing, because we gave them what's called additional duties, or we call it alternative response. So they're taking the burglary reports, they're taking the theft reports, they're going out and interviewing people, they're doing everything but the priority one calls where you need a person with a gun. They're doing the traffic accidents. All right, so what does an officer do when he gets out of the academy? The things I'm going to score you on is geography. Can you navigate the city? Oh my gosh. My kid grew up here, and I swear to God, he was lost every single day of the first training program because we put him on the west side. You go, I don't know anything about the west side. And so it happens. Navigation is huge. You have to learn the major streets and thoroughfares. As a CSO, and if you don't go to CSO, that's all right. CSOs have to navigate and have to go to the calls for service. The only thing they're not doing, again, is responding to those really hot calls. They go to traffic accidents. They position the car, they take the information, and they're doing some of the reports, right? They're taking reports and actually documenting them and doing reports and filling them out. All the reports that we were doing for years, the burglary reports, they're investigating the scenes of the burglaries. As long as there's not a suspect there, I'm sending a CSO. Why? Because I don't have enough cops. So I need my cops to go to the fights and the domestics and stuff like that. So now I have to send my CSOs to, hey, if somebody broke into my house, they're not here, but it happened yesterday. So my CSOs are coming there and they're doing the CSI stuff. They're taking the DNA samples. They're documenting everything that was gone. They're doing the reports. Same thing when the car broken into at the trailhead. They're going out there, they're dusting it, they're taking the DNA and they're documenting, they're putting it into our system. We have several different systems and they know how to use them. Not only to check the NCIC, CCIC to check wants and warrants, run cars and plates, they tow cars, they know all that system, but also how do the reports flow and all that. They learn that, and we have a lot of them. They're very successful, going in there for about 6 months, and several of them go to school here at this time when they're doing it. Did that for about 6 months and then moved on. Nothing wrong with applying for it at the same time too. Apply for CSO and apply for CSPD. But if you get on CSO, I tell you, and you do well, I think it's fair to say that the chief and the deputy chiefs look at that so favorably you can consider it kind of a step above. It's like, hey, they're working out great for us, they know our employees, our supervisors are saying great things about them, and they're already doing all these things that an officer would do, except for that one exception. Yeah, we take them, you bet. So that's kind of my plug for the CSO program. If it helps, great. I kid you not, I told my kid, if you don't make it, and you're really serious, this is the place you go, because it's so much less stressful in your field training program, because you already know how to do this stuff, and you don't have like Rich Radabaugh sitting next to you and go, how can you not find Brookside, Nevada? Seriously, how can you not find that? It's here somewhere. And then you already know how to do reports. You can find it and stuff and go through the computers.
He's not joking, as when I was a field training officer, I've actually had to go back to the academy, had a field training recruit. We had to go back to the academy, and all we did every day was get in the car for 8 hours, and I would give him an address. And we have to drive there, and then I would give him another address, and I would time him. And we did that 8 hours a day for 2 days, because he didn't know how to read a map.
And I want to start with that wasn't me. First disclaimer, it was not me. But the things that we'll tell you in the academy will be very, very helpful, but we won't tell you how to read a map. They'll show you, but there's things that I will come and tell you before you get out. I'll tell you, hey, you've got 3 weeks left, you got 6 weeks left, turn on your radio. You're going to listen to calls at night. Same thing I tell all of them, and no different than I told them. Turn on the radio. You have what's called a radio ear. You have to listen for a call sign. Then you're going to sit down with your map every single day for 10 minutes or so. You're going to listen to the call. You're going to start point, and you can pick the same start point or whatever start point you want. Start from UCCS. And they're going to call out 425, 425, go ahead. 425, whatever the call is. Go to, 500 South Nevada Avenue on a theft call or a transient call, whatever it is. Okay? So you're going from UCCS. Now you got to find what page, because maps don't come into this big one, right? We don't carry that one. That's cool for like a TV show, but you don't. So they flip. So you're going to go from page 53 to page 47, and you're going to tell me how to get to here fairly quick. And what's the best route? Well, how can you get there? You're going to go up here and here. Okay, then now what's the most direct route? And if you're with like route, it's like, hey, there's 5 different turns you could make. It'd be so much shorter because he knows the place. But you're going to have to do that, because even though we have technology, and it's like the satellites are not going to fall out of the sky. We know it's going to be effective. We know we don't allow you to use it for the first week minimum. First week, you have to run the calls with a book, a map book. Right? There's all sorts of things we do, and not just to torture you, but there are things that go down, and there are situations we have to use a map book. If you're setting up containment, you have to pull out a map. You have to be able to look and give me directions and tell me what's up ahead and how to get there and move around using a map book versus electronic, GPS.
I have a question for you on that one.
Mm-hmm.
So I did ride along with an officer, and he would not use GPS or Google Maps, but they give you those little numbers to indicate the section of the city
The
it's
fire
in.
maps?
Yes.
Uh-huh.
Are those allowed in the first week, or are those not the first week?
No, but that's really good, and I think you should ask those things, but we'll say no. Okay.
Okay.
So, I'm being kind of sarcastic, but we're going to show you all the things that are available for you that get guys and girls to areas as quick as they can. But the first week minimum, you don't get to use any of that because we want you to know how to use a map book effectively, and you have to be fairly quick with it.
Mhm.
So, and then after that, they're going to show you every other device available. And I like that they. And I think our next cars will come out with it there, but I like the GPS right on the windshield. And you'll see it. Do you need to plug in the address? No. But what you're looking for is different between now and the middle of the night. You can't see the street signs. So when you come up to the next street, you'll see it on your Google, but I swear you can't see that as you're coming up 50, 60 miles an hour. And you have to make that right. And I get guys all the time, hitting their lights, skidding across. Oh my gosh, new people, terrible at that. And backing up and doing all crazy driving, just try to, there's a street.
Well, that GPS is slow too. I mean, you're traveling 50 miles an hour,
It
60
is,
miles an
sometimes.
hour, and it says, turn right in a quarter mile. Well, you've already traveled a half a mile by the
Yeah.
time it says that.
Yeah, and we won't let you use the voice at all during training. You won't get whatever voice you picked out, from Australia to tell you to turn back there. That ain't happening. But what we will let you use is that you can see it. So what you're doing is you're driving up or down Academy Boulevard, you'll see the streets coming up. And so you'll know, because you know that the street I have to turn on is I have to turn on Brookside, then I have to make a turn on whatever the next street is. You say, okay, Brookside's coming up, it's the next one up. I'm cool, I can turn on that one, turn on this one. That's what we'll allow you to use. But yeah, don't expect Mother Teresa's voice to come over and tell you to turn. It ain't happening. Because we need you to be confident in the areas that you are. And one of the things is navigation. The next one is radio use. The last one is that you can contact people, and you contact them with some type of confidence. That you can get out information that is extremely important, and that you know how to filter it. And be honest with you, we do it fairly quickly. We don't, we kind of put Band-Aids on things, but we put Band-Aids on things fairly quick. Go in, here's the things I need to know. You gotta be empathetic, you gotta be sympathetic, but you also gotta get the stuff, and let's move on. What information do I need? Well, you're in a robbery. You are wound up. Somebody just put a gun to your head, sold you stuff. Okay, what do I need? I need the suspect information. Give me height, weight, color, clothes. I want that on the radio. You have to extrapolate that fairly quickly, and you have to be confident enough. Put your hand on somebody's shoulder, say, it's all right, I just need this out. Here's why. Those are the things we're looking for. We're looking for confident people. Doesn't matter height, weight, sex, doesn't matter. I need somebody who's confident out there to get out there and do this job, and then be able to do this job unsupervised. You are not supervised. No matter what they say, I am not supervising you. I can't, I'm not out there. Sergeants really aren't supervised enough because we don't have enough. They just go to the hotter calls to help with direction. You are really your own boss when you're out there. But that's the best part about being a police officer. That, and that every 3 years or 4 years, you can go to a whole new career. I've been in a number of different units. I can count on my hand. I've been in NARCs and some other ones that are really cool for 5 or 6 years, and then I go jump to another career. That's another great function of the police department. You do not have to sit there and do the same job for the next 25 or 30 years. You want to grow a ponytail and a beard, and the next thing you know, you go off and do something else and just work out with weights all day. But whatever it is, like Rich was. Whatever TU or SWAT unit you're in, or whatever the other units are, you can do that. And that's the draw. But the draw is energetic people. We want somebody who's energetic, ready to go, and then you need to show that in your interview. I want this. That's the kind of person we're looking for. Fair? Hey, we gotta go to work.